It's another week and another brand new episode here on the Granny Panty podcast. I'm your host, RubyLynne. Before we go any further, be sure to hit that subscribe button and tap that bell because you don't want to miss an episode. We're always doing something fun, talking about new and up and coming things here on the podcast. This week's guest is someone very special. I have seen her at events and we've moved in the same circles with platforms, but I have never sat down with her and really heard about what her day-to-day life is like. What does she do in sessions? And I'm just very curious about the pro-dom arena. So help me welcome Goddess Lilith. Goddess Lilith, I'm so excited to have you on the show this week. I cannot wait to learn more about you.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
I feel like forever we've moved in the same events, but never had a chance to really chat until XBiz LA last month.
Yeah. We had a nice little quiet moment in between the madness to catch up a little bit.
Yeah, and I realized I really don't know a lot about what you do. So I am excited to kind of give you this, platform and chat with me because I'm sure there's a lot of education I need about pro doms and all that good stuff.
Yeah, well, I'm stoked to be here. So thank you again for the opportunity.
So start off and tell me, how long have you been doing this? Because when you told me how old you were, I was completely floored. I had you for at least 10 years younger than.
All right, I'm doing good. I mean, I started pretty early on as far as the sort of kink lifestyle. I didn't get into the professional work until I was after 18, but I started sort of getting involved in the kink lifestyle before that, like when I was in high school in my own personal life. So it was a pretty natural progression for me to get into fetish modeling when I was of age. And I just sort of I jumped right in. I've always been kind of an exhibitionist. And so when I discovered webcams, back in the late 90s, it was like 1998. And I was like, wow, this is, back then it was a really kind of unique concept. You didn't really see a lot of people out there doing that. And, nowadays every laptop you get comes with a webcam in it, but it definitely wasn't like that back then. So, but for whatever reason, I was really drawn to getting one. I had my, I forget, I think it might have been like one of the original, like first Logitech webcams. And there wasn't streaming back then. We had to upload a static image every 20 to 30 seconds. And
wow.
there was no audio. So we had to communicate using captions at the bottom of the picture. And so, kind of like you post on Instagram now with your captions and stuff, like that's how we had to talk to our audience. I had an IRC chat room, if you remember that program.
I don't.
It was a really, really early communication tool, kind of almost like, what could I compare it to? Almost like Discord or Slack or something where, you could just leave it open all day and people would just sort of stay logged into the chat and then periodically come back to chat. And if I was on camera, I'd be in there and people would be chatting with me in there. So that's sort of where things started with my career. And then as time went on, I started meeting more and more kinky people online, and they started having some, shall we say, unusual requests for me. And I definitely had some foot guys right away.
Yeah.
And it was ironic because around the same time, those people sort of started appearing in my stream and making them, or not my stream, rather my feed, and making themselves known. I had been invited to be a foot model at a foot party, and
Wow.
I was like, what's a foot party? You know, this was in the early 2000s at this point, and one of my other friends that I've been modeling with, she's like, you know what? I don't really know. I think it's just like a bunch of guys, and you get paid for them to like touch your feet and stuff. And I'm like, okay, fine. You know, I was in college and I was sort of like freshly out of high school, and I'm like,
Right.
sure, why not? Let's check this out. And that experience was my first foray into pro domination.
Mm-hmm.
When I got there, it was in the a basement apartment in Brighton, just outside of Boston. And I remember it was the day of like the World Series or something, and the Red Sox were playing. But even despite that, there were all of these guys there. You know, instead of watching their precious little ball game, they were
Yeah.
there to get their freak on. You know, and I
Mm-hmm.
think it was about maybe 15 guys or so, 15 girls, something like that.
Wow.
And my mind was just blown, because in addition to the sort of like foot worship aspect
Mm-hmm.
of it, there was all this other stuff going on. Like, these guys were submissive, they were
Ah.
slaves, some of them, and you know, they were getting walked on, they were getting slapped in the face, like they were getting kicked in the balls. Like, it was so much fun. And I was like, wow, you know, like there's a whole like scene
Right.
here. And I'm like, wow, I can make money doing this. This is great. So I just sort of went like headfirst right into it. And I started taking sessions with the guys outside of the parties. And pretty soon I had my first lifestyle slaves. And it just sort of ramped up
Wow.
from there. And then, you know, maybe a year or two later, I was looking around on Craigslist, and this was back when there were all sorts of gigs in the gig section
Oh,
anyway.
yes.
And so I saw one for, it was an ad for, it was like, do you want to be a dominatrix? And I was like, okay, sure, I'm already doing this, I might as well get even deeper in. And so it was this interesting situation where it was a situation where it was like, I don't think, like, you know, pimp is not exactly the right word, but it was a man running it, and it was
Gotcha.
several young women in the area, several doms. And I met another dom in the area,
Mm-hmm.
and we started working together. He started putting us together, sending us on session appointments and stuff, and they were always at, like, you know, cheap sleazy motels. And
Right. Right. Right.
occasionally we would get sent to the person's house, and it
Mm-hmm.
always felt safe to me, because they were being screened by a guy, and two, like, you know, there were multiple of us, usually at least two,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes there'd be three of us. So I never
Uh-huh.
really had any fears or anything. And after maybe 6 months of doing that, me and one of the girls decided, hey, we don't need this guy,
Right.
let's just do this. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we basically, we kind of learned from each other.
Mm-hmm.
And we, you know, we back then it was really difficult to find any sort of real training for this type of thing. You know,
Right.
now you can either go on the internet, or you can go to one of the major cities, and most likely
Right.
you'll be able to take a class on how to be a pro dom, or several classes, or an intensive course or something.
Right.
But, you know, we just kind of, we had to use the limited resources that we
Mm-hmm.
had to learn how to do this. And of course, later on in my career, I did end up, it was great. I was able to take some classes and some workshops at events and things like
Uh-huh.
that. But, you know, those first few years, it was just sort of like, all right, let's figure this out. Let's do this. And then a few years after that, I started doing content,
Mm-hmm.
and this was around I think 2006
Okay.
is when I bought GoddessLilith.com, and I started doing clips for sale. And yeah, it just sort of, you know, as you know, if you look on clips for sale, it's just
Yeah.
this whole world opens up in front of you. There's
Right.
hundreds upon thousands of different categories and fetishes. And so, you know, I started kind of experimenting and putting myself out there as an
Mm-hmm.
available model, taking different modeling gigs, for mostly for people doing clips.
Yeah.
And I
Wow.
remember my first really good paying clip gigs were bondage gigs. but they
Ah,
put me in bondage and I hated it. I was like, okay, this is not for me. It was like, not only was it really just physically uncomfortable for
right.
me, like, I don't like being restrained really, but it just felt like degrading and
Mhm.
like it just, I was like, no, I feel, this is not what I want to do. So I guess, you could say I tried sort of seeing if I was into maybe playing a more submissive role at
Right.
any time.
You're
And
like, hell no, I am
yeah,
no
I
switch.
learned very quickly. I was like, nope, this is not it. I'm never doing that again. It's kind of a shame that I didn't, I wasn't more into it though, because the bondage gigs pay really well.
I bet.
Getting paid like $400 for a 2 hour shoot. And it was real easy to get those because,
Yeah,
if you think about it, like there's there's probably not a huge cross section of models that it's going to be okay with being tied up by some guy at their place. You know what I mean?
exactly.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
I
so
couldn't handle that either.
yeah, so I tried though. I'm always sort of I'm open minded, and I
Uh,
like to. I was exploring. I didn't really know what I was into back
mhm.
then. So I don't regret doing it. I'm glad that it was so long ago though that
Yeah.
there's like you cannot find those clips or those photos anywhere. So because
Wow.
that would not be good for my career now.
Sure.
That would be a direct contradiction of my brand. So at least and similarly, actually, I had experimented with doing a little bit of soft porn.
Uh-huh.
Um, when I first started, it was all solo stuff, but when I was doing my webcam stuff, like I was just doing like, your kind of usual run of the mill, like
Right.
your toy shows,
Yep.
and I'd be having sex with my partner or whatever. So I started off as sort of like more of a vanilla cam model, you could say. But after a while, I kind of felt like a puppet.
Oh
I
yeah.
was, I don't want to be a dancing puppet for you. And like, being able to get paid to like hook up with my partners was great and everything. But I decided as I started getting more into femdom and getting more serious about my
Mhm.
music career, that I just didn't want nude porn content of
Sure.
myself on the internet. So luckily, again, I was paid really well for those that little handful of solo shoots that I had been
Mhm.
paid for initially. But thankfully, they don't exist on the internet anywhere. I was using a totally different model alias back then anyway. So, like,
Yeah.
it did not come and bite me in the ass. So I'm grateful for that. I
Yeah.
would say anyone who's entering the industry as a newbie, like, think about these things before you do them because it's a lot more likely to come and bite you in the ass now.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that is true. I love that you knew that you went right into this, like, right out of high school, and it reminds me of another guest I had on, which was, Whitney Morgan,
I love Whitney. Oh
and
my
she said the same thing. She knew what she wanted to do, and, she got out of high school and went right with it and has had, like you, have had the same career.
Yeah, I
How
love
did
Whitney.
your family feel when you started all this?
Yeah, that's a good question. So obviously, I hid it from them for a while because I was living
Okay.
in their house.
Yeah.
I lived under my parents' roof till I was about 21,
Mhm.
22. Um, I was in college and stuff, so
Gotcha.
I kind of had to be there. And at first, it was easy to hide it because I just, I stayed in my room, kept the
Sure.
door closed, and I waited till late at night when they were asleep. But then I got my first super fan who turned into my first sort of online slave, and he started sending me all the stuff off my Amazon wish list. And he
Mm.
sending a lot of packages, and I was able to kind of like intercept some of them.
Yeah.
This is before I knew about having a PO box. So
Right.
eventually, my mom she started noticing the packages, and it had my model name on them. I was
Oops.
going by, what was I going by? I think I was just using Lilith Astaroth back then, and she was
Mhm.
like what is this? Like, who is this for? I'm like, oh, yeah, yeah, I've been doing some modeling. It's just one of my friends is sending me stuff. And she just sort of raised an eyebrow at me and didn't really ask anything more. But then it happened a couple more times. And eventually she
Sure.
took it on herself to just Google me. And then she found everything. And it was
Sure.
particularly cringe because at that time was when I had decided kind of that I myself wasn't going to be doing like porn types of
Sure.
content anymore, like sexual stuff.
Yep.
Um, or at least I should say overtly sexual, nude content, penetration, and things like that. However, I had decided to dip my toes into affiliate marketing. And I believe so. StreamMate has always been really great about having a built-in affiliate platform for the models, right?
Right.
You use your link and you link to your chat room and you get a commission lifetime off of the
Mm-hmm.
members that you refer and whatever they spend. So what I did do right there, it just bam, smack. The first thing that you would see on my website was a very suggestive photo of me, like, doing a hand bra or
Sure.
something, covering up my boobs, and with the most raunchy description, like, hey, come watch me, like, sucking and fucking, like, blah, blah, blah. Absolutely horrifying for, like, anyone's mom to see, right?
Yeah.
So she saw that. And as you can imagine, she was not happy. Now, I come from a conservative Italian family.
Mm-hmm.
My mom went to Catholic school. So, my parents were cool with me being a musician and being an artist and stuff, but they were definitely never any types of okay with me
Yeah.
doing anything raunchy on the internet. So my I was so like embarrassed
I
more than anything.
bet.
I tried to explain to her, I'm like, listen, I know this looks bad. I tried to explain the affiliate marketing thing. I'm like, I wrote this description as like clickbait,
Clickbait. Yeah.
but she, I don't even know if she fully believed me or not. So she made the intelligent decision to not tell my father, because my father probably would have kicked me out of the house
Yeah.
if he found out. So things were kind of weird with me and my mom for a little while. Like, obviously she didn't approve of what I was
Sure.
doing. And then I think I told her that I was gonna chill out, like I was gonna stop for a while, and I did. I kind of like I chilled out, while I sort of figured out what my next move was gonna be, and I decided not to. Of course, she didn't know about any of the in person stuff.
Yeah.
That I definitely didn't tell her about any of that either. She just found the internet paper trail,
Right.
so not too much longer after that, maybe, probably within about 6 months after that, I moved out and got my own place.
Gotcha.
And, I felt bad because my dad was kind of sad that I was leaving, but he had no idea why, you know what I mean? Um, so there was definitely like some aspects of like guilt there. I never felt like shame for what I
Yeah.
was doing, but I did feel kind of guilty and just kind of like sad and bummed out that I had put a rift between me and my family. And then, fast forward years and years later, I was living back in their neighborhood. I hadn't
Mhm.
moved back into their house with them, but
Yeah.
I wanted to be closer with them again. So I had moved into the same neighborhood, and I had like a live-in slave living with me
Oh.
at the time, and he was sleeping in a dog cage like in the attic. And then one time I completely forgot that the attic door was like open and you could
Yeah.
kind of see in there. And I I had my mom over and she went up to use the bathroom, which is where, the door was kind of like up in the ceiling there. And she saw the dog cage and she, of course she looked over and she was like, what, like, what is this? Why are
Yeah.
there, is there like a blanket and a pillow in there? And, my brother was there too. So he found out as well. And I was like, it's a prop. I told
Oh.
him that it was a prop and stuff, but like they kind of knew because they
Right.
knew that there was somebody living with me. I didn't like know the full details. And so, I have a sister too. And then, she kind of caught wind of stuff and like she was super judgmental about it.
Hmm.
Luckily my dad like never found out somehow still.
Wow.
So, cause yeah, I don't think I would have been able to sort of like have that conversation with him at the time. And like, it
Yeah.
never really got, um, resolved or anything with my family. They just still sort of like judge me. You know what I mean? My
Gotcha.
mom has reached a point in life where her health has been declining and
Hmm.
she has realized like, just she just sort of ignores it now.
Yeah.
She knows like what I'm doing and stuff like that, but we just don't talk about it. I
Right.
think like she has realized that it's more important to like have a relationship with me than
Yeah.
to argue over my life choices. Like she knows I'm being safe. She knows that my husband, knows what I'm doing and he's
Hmm.
sort of involved in some of it as well. Like, he does all of my clip editing and holds camera. He films sometimes.
Wow.
Sometimes
See,
he's
I
in.
didn't even know you were married.
Oh yeah, my hubby. He's in some of my content. We have our own brand together. It's called Swedish Lovebirds. I sort of pulled him into the industry too. I was like, hey, so after we had been dating for like about a year, I was like, he
Yeah.
was always like super cool with it. His parents actually were also very open about it and cool with it too. So
Oh,
luckily I
that's
was able to,
refreshing.
yeah, I was like, wow, okay, well, I can't talk to my family about this, but I can talk to you guys about it. And, they love and accept me even despite, knowing all of the details of what I
Hmm.
do, so that was pretty cool. But yeah, he's, I'm surprised you haven't seen him with me actually, because he's often with me at events and stuff. But yeah, we have our own brand together and he does all of my clip editing. He
That's
even
so
does
cool.
yeah, it's been wonderful. He's always been supportive. Like he's always sort of like he's even like kind of been turned on watching me play with people and stuff like
Sure.
that. So it's been great. And yeah, we
That
we
is
got
cool.
nominated a couple of times over the years for different scene work or like he helps me run my website and XBiz nominated our website
Hmm.
last year. And so he's walked the carpet with me a few times. It's been fun. And yeah,
That is
nowadays
cool.
like I'm sort of like making a little foray into YouTube stuff and he edits my YouTube videos for me too. And now that's like his full-time hustle is doing video editing for people because he really loves it. And I'm like, this is cool because I hate it. Like
That's good to know because I feel like even for myself, and I get asked all the time, do you know anybody that does editing? So
oh yeah. Yes,
I'll put,
feel free. Like send him my way, and I can
yeah,
hook you up with his info because he actually genuinely loves doing video
that's
editing, and I'm,
cool.
I'm happy for him that he's found something in life that he really enjoys doing for work because
That's awesome.
it can be tricky to find the things that you actually enjoy, and we're both
Yep.
musicians and we love playing music and performing, but that doesn't pay the bills.
Oh, I swear, yeah, nothing in like art, music, drawing, none of that pays big. But
Yeah.
in your experience, what are some of the common misconceptions about the role of the dominatrix, especially in the BDSM world?
Yeah, so I think the biggest one is that people assume that the dom is having sex with the client or the partner or whatever.
Yep.
I was dating this younger guy for a little while before I met my husband, and he didn't know anything about the industry. Like he was a cosplayer, that was like the closest to the industry that he had been, and he saw me with like these guys around doing stuff for me,
Yeah.
chauffeuring me around, doing my chores, blah, 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 paying my bills and stuff. And I had this one guy that was around for a while and he was like 75 years old, and
Wow.
I was like 27 or something at the time. So like quite the big age difference there, like almost 50 years. And this dude was just one of my slaves. I have found that older gentlemen often make better slaves because they just have their shit together more, or maybe
Oh,
they're
yeah.
freshly divorced and they're looking for, a fun new kind of companion. And they have a bunch of money. So, let's go travel the world together doing kinky shit. But the guy I was dating just sort of point blank one day asked me, he's just like, so, what's it like having sex with an old man? And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Where is this coming from? And he was just like, oh, well, he's your slave, right? I mean, all this time I just assumed that, like, you guys were in a relationship, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Like, I'm like, no, 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 no. There's absolutely no sex happening here at all. That's not what this is about. And like, ugh,
Right.
like I was just like, ugh, I can't believe, like, ew, like, obviously everybody has their different tastes and stuff. Like,
Sure.
some women like, super older men. I am not one of those people, but I was like, the fact that he, the guy I was dating thought that just sort of reminded me that I think a lot of people think that
Yeah.
they'll see us out, they'll see him on my leash or whatever, and they assume that we're in a sexual relationship.
Right.
That's just not how it is. And most pro doms are not having sex with their clients either. Now I say most. There are a few who sort of like blur the lines and do full
Sure.
service, but that's their call. It's their body. It's up
Right.
to them. I don't really look down on anybody who chooses to do full service. Maybe if I were single at this point in my life, maybe I would consider doing a little more full service myself if I
Sure.
found the guy attractive. Like, why not? But for the most part, doms don't have sex with their clients, and if they
Right.
do, it's pegging, which is them
Right.
putting a strap on and doing them. So
It's a power dynamic.
yeah, exactly. That's generally like the only form of sex that's going on. So that one for sure. That's what I think the biggest misconception is.
And how do you approach when you are doing these sessions? How do you approach creating a safe and consensual environment? Do you have paperwork and all that kind of thing that you exchange
Yeah.
with your client?
Yep. So to even get in the door with me, first they have to fill out an application form to be considered. And that application form has everything like, you know, tell me about your kinks, to tell me about your any health conditions that you might
Yeah.
have. What are things that are on your absolute hard no list? So all of that stuff sort of gets negotiated before we even have a session. And then I always ask for references for my own personal safety. And if they don't have any references, I tell them, well, you either have to come back when you have some references, or you can come to one of my public events. And
Gotcha.
I do session party events like a few times a year, where I mean I still try to vet the guys to some degree.
Right.
Obviously we have security there and whatnot, and rarely have I ever had any issues. But I usually, if it's somebody, if I'm talking to them and they kind of seem off, I might not let them attend. Or, I might be like, okay, send me a copy of your ID
Sure.
and then do a background check on them. And then I would say 95% of the time they do. And if they don't, I'm like, okay, no problem. Like you don't have to come, and you can just find somebody else to session with. But yeah, so
for sure.
that's kind of what happens before the session. And then once they get to the session, take a few minutes, have a little conversation first, let them kind of settle in, and then go over, I don't like to kind of put out like a to-do list of what we're going to do in the session, because it's what I want to do. And I want there to be an element of mystery there, of course, as the provider. I mean, that's why they're there. They want to be a little bit scared, they want to not know what's coming. So I just kind of go over that stuff like that. If there is pegging involved, I give them like a link to a full guide about how to clean out properly, how to do and stuff like that. Because when, I've unfortunately had quite a few situations working with other DOMs where maybe they did or they didn't tell the client to clean out, and it was really messy and really disgusting. And I am not into scat. That is not one of my kinks.
That can be a
So
really crappy deal.
yes, exactly. So it's, like that's the kind of thing that will, as a provider, will completely burn you out
Oh,
fast. If you have too many experiences like that, you're
yep.
just going to be too grossed out to continue. So I try to, of course, bodies are going to do what bodies are going to do.
Sure.
Like literally, sometimes shit happens anyway, even if they do clean out. So
That's
I'm just
right.
sort of I'm very selective about who I session with a lot of
Yeah.
the times too. I think it's important to know that you don't have to take every single client. When I was in college, it was different because I
Right.
had bills to pay, and I don't know, when you're that young too, I feel like things just bounce off you, like for the most part a little bit easier. They roll off your back more. Like, I saw a lot of like cringy girls that time. And although it did kind of burn me out, like I don't really have any like super traumatic memories of that
Yeah.
time, except for the situations I just described where like pegging session gone wrong. So yeah, that's sort of like, the emotional and
Hmm.
mental aspects of sort of making a good, keeping me safe,
Sure.
keeping them safe, making them feel nurtured and stuff. And then, physically, like every dom that knows what they're doing, like is paying attention to their bottom very closely and watching their reactions, like looking at the expressions on their face, because sometimes people will say stuff is okay but it's not, or
Yeah.
they just won't say anything at all, and it's up to the provider to be able
Hmm.
to see that. So I use the stoplight system, green,
Hmm.
yellow, red, and then there's also blue now, which is sort of like a trigger for like, oh, I'm having emotionally a hard time right now.
Okay.
So yeah, and other than that, it's just sort of basic stuff, like don't
Yeah.
do dangerous things, like don't do things you don't know how to
Right.
do or you haven't been trained on. Like I didn't do anything with needle play until I had guidance from somebody and
Sure.
I learned how to do it right. So, just like common sense stuff too.
That's cool. Yeah, and when you talk about training, I have a very dominant personality. Like I am not a very good I
Nice.
can't I just can't do it. So of course on, different sites, Nightfloor, whatever, I get all these requests for like this domination thing. And yeah, I can lightly do it, but I always say to them like I'm not professionally trained, or they'll reach out to me via Twitter, wherever, like I want you to do, like something in real life. And I'm like, I am not trained to do that. And I feel like for me, I've seen so many, and maybe it's because of TikTok, the explosion of like the findom and all that, that's these people make these videos, but it's not really realistic
No, it's
information.
not real
Yeah.
life.
And, it's like, oh, I made $10,000, taking men's money. Yeah. But what's there's a lot of emotional responsibility, I think,
Hmm.
in what you do.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah, I've been wanting to take a class. We have a dungeon here in Portland, uh,
Oh, nice.
and they offer like beginning Dom classes, and I just want to take it to have better understanding.
Hmm.
So, what
I
would
mean,
you say has been the most challenging aspect of your profession, like to meet these role play requests, or things from clients? What challenges you the most?
I think when I first kind of started, I was more judgmental of people's
Ah,
kinks that I didn't, find turn on. Like I was
sure.
just a lot of guys are. I mean, even now, like I'm more. I generally kind of am accepting of whatever kink somebody has. Like
Mhm.
even if it's not my thing, like
Right.
I do get the scat guys sometimes. Like every dom is gonna get propositions for things
Sure.
that are possibly uncomfortable for them. But now instead of being like, oh, you're gross, I'm just sort of like, no, that's not really my thing, but I can recommend you to this one of my friends who does that. Or, if I feel okay with it, I might sort of lightly, mildly talk to them about it, at least online. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it in person, but, I don't mind talking about it. But I would say that some of the kinks that have been brought to me are definitely just like inappropriate to like I'm not even going to mention some of the stuff because I know this is probably like be on YouTube. I don't want any monetization issues for you. So like stuff like that. I've heard and seen some kind of disturbing things over the years, and I definitely feel like sometimes like, oh, I really need a lot of eye bleach after that, or like, hey, I hope I can like, I've heard along the way that playing Tetris after a traumatizing event helps you recover faster mentally. So I have Tetris on my phone, and I use it sometimes after a particularly trying interaction with somebody, or maybe something I had to see while I was doing a cam session with some. Because I have noticed too with online domination, men will do much more way than they will do in person. You know what I mean? So I've had to see some pretty gross and disturbing things, and honestly, just having a look at male genitalia all day is not, and it's not generally attractive male genitalia. It's really like unattractive male genitalia. Like that's probably one of the hardest parts of my job, I would think. There's a lot of sort of in the femdom world, you're gonna, especially in real life scenarios like parties, for example, events, you're going to be subject to male nudity, seeing male nudity, because it's the whole like power dynamic. It's like, oh, well, that strips them of all of their dignity and blah, blah, blah. And like, I'm like, yes, I'm totally for that. I get that. I personally am grossed out looking at their junk. So like, put them in chastity at least or something, so I don't have to see all of it. Like I'm just tired of looking at dicks.
I can understand that. But you segue right into my next question. So this is perfect. How do you, maintain your own mental health? How do you take care of yourself? And do you have routines after sessions? So that perfect segue into that.
Yeah. So as far as taking care of myself, I listen to my body, and I listen to sort of like my internal dialogue. Now, obviously, as you know, as a content creator and an entrepreneur, like we have the tendency to work every day if we can, because whenever you're not working, you're not making money. So I like to work too. I like to work like every day if I can. And to me, taking a full day off not only feels kind of weird, but also like it has certain effects. Like, I do have like a small team of people I need to communicate with as well. And if I kind of disappear for a day or two, like, the team starts to kind of fall apart a little bit. They're mostly self-sufficient, but I still, they still need me to some degree. And so it can be hard for me to take, a full step away for like a day or two. But if I'm like, I think I want to stay in bed an extra 2 hours today, like I do it. If I want to stay up late at night, like binge watching, like, trash TV or something after I just had really intense day of sessions, or had to deal with somebody particularly annoying, like I'm going to do it. And I've also found that working with friends helps a lot. I would highly recommend, if you have trusted friends that you enjoy working with, double up. It makes it so much smoother to kind of experience these things with another person. It's like it's kind of like trauma bonding, you know what I mean? But it's so much, like I love camming with friends. I love doing double dom sessions. that's another way I can mitigate some, just kind of like the emotional labor of
Right.
dealing with these guys too. I love working with friends. And also, even though I don't take, very much time off normally, when
Hmm.
I do, I go all out. Like I will take at least one actual like vacation at least once a
Good.
quarter. I will go somewhere for a few days and just unplug.
That's
And
good.
at least a couple times a year. Now, of course, again, as a content creator, you're still always sort of making
Right.
content and stuff like that. Like I'm still going to be taking my pictures, taking my selfies and stuff, but I'm not logging into my OnlyFans,
Right.
or I'm not, doing any fan service, paying attention to my socials or whatever. And I use a good percentage of my earnings
Hmm.
towards having awesome life experiences, going on
That's
cool
good.
adventures. I love traveling. Last summer I was all over Scandinavia. This summer
That's
I'm planning on
amazing.
spending my summer in Europe. So I take a good chunk of the money that I earn and I treat myself, and
As you
I
should. You work hard, you know?
yeah, for sure. I think that a lot of us have a tendency to kind of hold on to our money because we want to save it, invest in our
Yeah.
future and stuff like that. But, I think in this country, a lot of people are of the mindset of like, oh, I have to save every penny until I retire. That's kind of what we're told. You only get
Right.
this little bit of amount of pleasure until your retirement age. But I'm like, no, I don't have a huge retirement fund. I'm just going to be honest. I
Me
don't.
neither.
Like, okay, I'm glad to hear that. But you know what? That I prefer to live. I prefer to have awesome
Yep.
experiences. And if I feel like I've got another good at least 10 years of performing left in me, and
Oh, yeah.
I'm starting to get more into the education side of things where I'm
Hmm.
teaching people more often now. So even whenever I decide I don't want to be in front of the camera anymore,
That's
I already
right.
have plans of, doing the educational stuff, doing more public speaking, and being behind the camera too. I've started to dabble a little bit with just being a director slash
That's
producer. So,
cool.
I'm not gonna I don't like the idea of, no matter how old I am, of just laying around doing nothing.
Oh, I know. Same. Same.
I think that would make me totally miserable. So I'm not worried about what's going to happen when I eventually want to retire.
Yeah.
Like if I'm going to retire and do absolutely nothing, it's going to be probably because I'm like super super old and like don't have the energy to do anything
Because
anymore.
your walker won't fit through the hall wherever you need to go.
Right. And by then, I'm going to probably be living on some tropical island. Like I fully intend on leaving the country at some point or another. I just
Yeah.
have to convince my husband to get on board with it. He's not on board with it right now, but I'm hoping, give it a couple more decades. And
Oh, yeah. You'll wear them down by then.
yeah, exactly. I mean, he moved out to Vegas with me from, we were living in the Northeast before. So
Wow. That's
I,
awesome. How long have
yeah.
you been married?
We have been married. Let's see. We just celebrated our fifth wedding anniversary a couple months,
Congrats.
and we've been together for going on 9 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, as we close out, one, I want to make sure that we shout out where people can find you if they want to book you or, have a cam session and that kind of good thing. Where should they go?
Yeah, so there's a couple places you can go to learn about all of the stuff that I do, including the mentoring and
Mm-hmm.
the business kind of side of things, where I do my coaching and educational stuff, and you can get some of my digital products about content creation. You can go to goddesslilith.com. And if you're more interested in having sessions or
Mm-hmm.
buying my content, you can go to queengoddesslilith.com. And if you are interested in checking out my band, you can go to sorrowseed.com, or you can find us on any of the major streaming platforms like Spotify and YouTube. And of
Awesome.
course, my socials. As of this time, I just had another Instagram banned. But
Oh
as of this
no.
time, yeah, my Twitter and IG that you can find me on is at Goddess Lilith 66.
Okay.
So those are all the places you can find me. And on YouTube, which is my educational content for creators, it's
Mhm.
Goddess_Lilith.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I will definitely post all that too when this goes live, but
Awesome. Thank you so
thank
much.
you so much for taking the time. I mean, I feel like I learned a lot. And I feel also like we could have talked an additional hour because we didn't even touch on some things.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I could talk all day about all the different things. So if you ever want to do part two, hit me up anytime.
That's awesome. And what do you have coming in 2025? Are you doing any events where fans can meet you?
Yeah, so let's see. I have a very busy summer ahead. May and June are going to be absolutely packed. So let's see. May, I'm going directly from XBiz Miami, flying over to Bucharest
Wow.
for a Femdom Summit in
Wow.
Bucharest. And then I am going straight from that to Berlin for Berlin Fetish Weekend, which is one of
Wow.
my favorite kinky events in the whole entire world. Highly recommend it. And then from there, I'm going back to Bucharest
Wow.
to go speak at the Bucharest Creator Summit, which is a great event. If you are a creator in the industry, I would highly recommend it. And then from there, I'm going to be staying in Finland for a while, and my
Wow.
band Sorrow Seed is playing a festival in Finland. It's like a 2-day fest in the middle of June, so you can check out our socials for all that info.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I think we're going to be booking a few more shows kind of around
Yeah.
Scandinavia, and then we're going to be finishing off in Ireland. And I have a family reunion that I go to every 3 years in Ireland. So I'll be in Dublin. Let's see, first weekend of July, and I will be
Wow.
taking sessions. So I love being served by the Irish boys because, fun fact about me, I came from a very powerful Irish family back in the day. So I love the idea of them just sort of being my servants and
That's
imagining the
right.
princess in the castle and just I love that. So I love being served by Irish boys. Come and see me out in
I love
Dublin
it.
this summer, and if you are out in Finland, come and see me in June because I'll be there for a while.
What a great opportunity. What a fun summer. I can't wait till I hope you post your adventures on socials and
Yes,
we'll
of
follow
course. Oh,
you.
and I forgot to mention too, I'm gonna cap off the summer with FetishCon.
There you go. And where is that? Is that in Florida?
Yep, it's in Tampa. It's in mid-August.
Okay.
And usually when I'm going there, I'm doing all the things. I'm doing sessions, I'm doing shoots. Sometimes I organize a foot party. I'll
Wow.
be teaching classes again this year, most likely. I love teaching massage classes for couples because I am also a licensed massage therapist.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, there's just the list goes on.
I love it. I love it.
There's so many other things too that I like don't even always have time to talk about them all. But
Right, right.
yeah, this summer's
Well,
gonna
thank
be
you
awesome.
again, and I hope you have an amazing summer traveling all around Europe.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm really
You-
excited. Thank you again for having me on the show.
You're welcome.